Wow. All right. All I can say is wow. If you can turn your chair to see me, that would be helpful. I know you want to use the table. That's helpful too. Mary, can I just shush you around a little bit here, so I don't have you on your back to me. I feel bad. Somebody has a back to me. Whew. All right. Thought I was ready. I didn't get over here in time, I guess. I feel like I'm preaching with this in front of me. Go for it. All right. I might pound the pulpit. We are going to start with everybody's favorite thing. What is your favorite thing? Very good. All right. You already know most of what you need to know. Right there. Let's open in prayer. Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for this opportunity to pour into the volunteers. I thank you for each volunteer here. I thank you for the role that they play in ministering to students through release time. I ask that you would guide our time, that I would share those things that they need to hear, that there would be questions that we could answer, things we need to work out. Lord, I just ask that you would be among us, and that all that is said and done would be to your honor and glory. Okay, I think there are enough packets here. If not, I will get some more. If you just want to take one of the stapled packets and pass them around. Okay, do we have any extras?
No.
I didn't keep one for myself. I'm going to follow along. Okay. This packet includes the student verse sheet for the first half of the year, the listener record, and the secretary record. Let's start with changes. We tried to update some things that you asked for. The student verse sheet now has a spot for the total, and it has a spot for the running total, and a little extra room in the margin if you need it, okay? As you look at this and see those changes, are there any questions? Let's just start with that. That's really the only thing that changed on this, except you will not see invite a friend verses. Because the invite a friend this year is not going to be handled the same way it has in the past. Excuse me. Each release time, I'm going to read this from my notes. It will be up to each release time if they want to do a special day for invited friends. There are no particular lessons. There are no particular verses. If you want to do an invite a friend day, we would encourage you to do that. We had a lot of people saying, well, we tell them to invite their friends all the time. That's great. If you want to do a special day and do special things, that is fine as well. There is still a form in the secretary manual and a form in the school coordinator manual. Please use the updated forms. The school coordinator manual and the secretary manual were completely reprinted this year. Not much changed, but if you would please reference that for any forms you want to copy, they would be the most updated, okay? So it will be up to your release time whether you want to do invite a friend and when you want to do it. If your leadership team of release time wants to get together and decide, okay, we'll do it at these lessons, then that's fine. However you decide you want to do that, okay? All right, are there any other questions as you look at this that I can help you with?
So the secretaries need to complete this part up here, or the?
No, this is the
lister
student verse sheet.
does? Right, but how are they gonna know if we
Yes,
don't put it up
the
there?
next bonus verse and the previous points will be on their label. You can let the listener do
It's on
that.
that.
Well, this is all, you added that up there, now the next bonus verse, you added that to put on here.
Yes,
That wasn't on there last time.
it was not.
Oh, I'm glad that's on there.
Yes. So you as a secretary may do that before the year starts if you want.
Yeah.
You may let the listener do it. It will be on their label. The listeners will have a label on their listener record. If you want them to fill that in with the student, that's fine. But this is the student verse card. We don't want the listeners and secretaries doing too much with this because this is for the students' use, so that they know where they are and what they need to do. Any other questions? Great question, Eileen, thank you. Yes?
So each week the listener will fill out the next bonus verse that they are on?
The listener does nothing with the student verse sheet. That is up to the student.
The students will do that?
This is the student's responsibility. The listener has a record of their own. If the student wants to look at the listener record, that is fine. We do not want the listeners taking the time to do this. That will take away from the relationship building time. If you are listening to another student and you want to give them their listener record so that they can fill in their card, or the listeners want to do that, that's fine. But we do not want the listeners doing anything with the student card. That's part of the reason we didn't put all this on here before. But the students asked for it, apparently. And the listeners liked it because everything they needed wasn't particularly on here either. My references,
Yeah.
okay? It
And
still has all the bonus verses on the back with 2 through 5.
That's good. That's
All
good.
five's on there, good.
5's
Yeah.
on there, yes. And there is, I don't think I made a copy of it, but there is what we call the bonus grid. That it's a half sheet like this. It has 1 through 12 on it. So if you have a student who has passed bonus verse 5, or bonus card 5, I'm sorry, bonus card 5, you can attach that bonus record to the listener card, the secretary card, and if you want to give one to the student, you may do that. You may make copies of that if you want. If you need more copies, let me know. Okay? Any other questions on this particular card?
Now, they are to put the date in when they say their verses, is that correct?
That is up to each individual release time as well.
Okay.
If you
They
want the
just want to
students,
put an X or,
yes,
okay.
whatever they need to do to know that they have done it. And as has been the case before, if the student verse sheet is different than the listener record is the official. We don't let the students tell us, oh, I said 3 of those last week. If it's not marked on the listener record, this is what we go by.
It would be best if the listener would put the date on it instead of the student.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's up to the release time. We don't want the listener writing on the student verse sheet. Like I said, that takes more of your time. We don't want that to happen. But if she or he has it on here, and the student looks at it and wants to write it on, that's fine. Okay? Any questions? There are no stupid questions. Please ask now if you have them. Anything.
It will take, I like that you coordinated and you're both the same, because last year the X's were at different places and I spent more time
Right.
Yeah, trying to figure it out.
verifying and what's,
We heard you.
I know you did, thank you.
Thank you.
They did.
Now, is
Anything
it
else?
true that they can say the books of the Bible more than once during the 3rd through 5th grade?
1 time per year for points.
That's what I thought, okay.
They can say it as often as they want. 1 time per year for points.
The 10
So,
Commandments
yes,
as well.
Old Testament, New Testament,
And
10 Commandments.
Okay.
1 time per year for points. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to the listener record. As Phyllis just pointed out, this is extremely similar to the student verse sheet. So the students were trying to mark some things on theirs that wasn't on theirs, so we tried to get it so that they can look at the listeners and mark what they need to. This has first half on the front, second half on the back. There again, there's going to be a lot of work for you up front. You will get 2 sets of labels for each student. Excuse me. The first label will go on the listener record, and the other one will go on the secretary record, which is yours. Okay? And you will have to, at the beginning of the year, you'll have to just start with all of, if there's a salvation decision, what their next bonus verse is, all of that kind of stuff will have to be taken care of. And then again, when we start after
And we
Christmas,
still don't have
it's a little extra work for the secretaries,
what the step into action is.
right up front and before or after Christmas. But there again, we have the bonus verses 2 through 5. There are bonus verse cards 1 in your tub for every listener. Okay? We didn't print those because we wanted to do this. So there should be a bonus card 1 for every listener, so that they can reference that if the student forgets their verse sheet or whatever. Okay? Any other questions? You will not have second half student verse sheets in your tub. You will get them in December. It will be up to you when you want to pass them out. If it was me, I'd wait till January, but it's up to you. If you want to give them to them and have them bring them back after Christmas, that is entirely up to you, however you want to do that. And it will be a different color. I don't even remember what color this is. I know the second half is lilacs, but I can't remember what this one was. So, any other questions? There are instructions in your school coordinator manual on how to mark all of these cards. I have them here as well. So if you want to take this packet, you may. If you don't have to take this. Like I said, it is in your school coordinator manual. So I will just pass these around, and if anybody wants to take them right now, that's fine. But there are detailed instructions with pictures, which I really like pictures, that tell you how to do each card. Okay? All right. Any more questions on the listener record? Okay, let us move on to the secretary record, which is the one you will be working on the most. I guess I have a question for some of you who were secretaries last year. How many of you checked the listener record every week?
We do.
How many of you checked the listener record at the end of the unit?
I do that too.
Yeah,
I do
okay.
that.
Only at the end of the unit. Let me put it that way. Okay. Are there questions either way? Advantages, disadvantages, how did you find it worked for you? If that's your system, feel free to do that again this year.
It was easier for me to find if there were incongruencies or if they forgot to mark down or something, their numbers and their columns and stuff. It's easier for me to check weekly than to figure out where did that come from and have to
Okay.
count up the whole thing.
Okay,
So that's why I do it.
And sometimes the listener can't remember.
Yeah.
right.
For 3 weeks.
Just put, do like we do, put a sticky note on their paper.
Sticky notes.
I do a lot of that.
As the secretary,
I
it
do
is
too.
your responsibility
Yeah.
to teach your listeners to mark their cards the way you want them marked. Some people prefer the X's, some people prefer the dates. And another thing to keep in mind is, excuse me, that when you mark this, you're not necessarily going to have
I'm sorry.
a total after each week. It doesn't really go by weeks, because they can memorize this 3 times. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, they may not do it 3 weeks. There are no extra verses on here either, now that I think about it. There are no extra lessons. There may be review lessons, but the only verses that a student may say during those times would be bonus. And there's, within the unit, there is place to write any bonus verses. Okay? All right, I will point out one change specifically to the secretary card. We added down here at the bottom, next bonus verse, after each unit. So if you want to write that in there instead of marking everything off and wait till the end of the year to mark everything off, you can do that. We heard you again. That was someone else's suggestion. So they said it was hard, you know, every week or every unit to keep up with all that because it was a lot of extra work. So if it ends up being Psalm 23:2 the first week and John 3:16 or whatever, you don't have to keep marking every week. By the time you get out here, the next bonus verse for next year should be written right there.
And crossed off at the bottom.
And yes, crossed off at the bottom. Any questions on that? I think that's the only thing that we changed on this. I really don't think there's anything. Anything else? Any questions? Again, there are instructions in your secretary manual, and those papers that I just passed around are identical to what's in your secretary manual, but if you like to have it handy, that's fine too. Okay, any other questions on the card at all? Okay,
I have a dumb question.
there are no dumb questions, Patty, please.
Well, when you mark the date on this card,
The listener or the secretary record?
yeah, the
Okay.
secretary, since it's a span of time, how do most of you write the date in there for that time, so that you know where to go back and say that they did do those?
The last date of that unit.
Okay, you just
That's
use the
what I
last
did.
date?
Mhm.
Okay. Because I tried to put both of them in there and divide it, but that's it's still a lot to write in there, but I just wondered, it was
Okay. Anybody else?
like above each unit.
Yeah.
That's what you put
The end of that unit.
Yeah, you just put the date that the unit ended,
Okay.
so that you know that those points for unit 1, that's the end of it.
I try to do things the hard way.
You're not alone on that one.
Do we need to, are you open to the whole thing, or we're just marking on this year, what they do this year? This is a record of this year, we don't have to go back and
Yes.
fill in from, okay,
No.
okay.
If you have a child who says, I never got my word search, you can either email me or call me, and we will check. If you kept that record last year, we will know. Okay? Did you have a question?
Yes, back on the listener record, to keep track of when they said their verses and looked up, I was told to put the date and the slash and the points. I just wonder how everybody else did this, because I had a hard time getting my listeners to do that.
I don't understand what you're
I'm
saying.
not sure I
Okay,
understand. There would only
under
be
here.
1 point each time.
Yes, well, that's how I was told to do it,
Okay,
and that's not necessary to do it like that then, huh?
no. I think most of them who put the date in, that's all they put in. is
Right.
the
The date, okay.
That signifies 1
1
point.
point, okay.
Yes, and some people put an X across it, that's 1
1
point.
point.
They can't have more than 1
Right.
point each week for
Okay.
memorizing.
Except
The
on
verse.
bonus
Yes.
verses.
The verse.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Except on the bonus verses?
Except bonus verses, that would be
Mhm.
correct.
And then, bonus verses, you just put the total.
Just
No-
the
no
total.
date or anything, just the total.
Just the total.
Yes,
Total number. Okay, yeah, they might have an easier time doing it. that
yes.
way.
And if you've done all 3, let's just take unit 1. If you've done all 3 verses, and they said bonus verses for 3 weeks, and then you have a review week, you can then put a cross between one of those bonus lines if you want, and write more bonus verses, and that will signify to you that they said bonus verses on review week. Because we don't have an extra spot for a review week for bonus. Or, if you're keeping it in pencil, as they should be keeping it in pencil, you could erase it and just add the bonus points. But you can have your listeners do this for whatever is best for you. But you will have to explain to them what you want. As I said, that is part of your responsibility, to train them to mark the card. May I ask who trained you to do it that way?
I don't wanna mention any
Okay.
names, but, we had somebody there, we just started in February.
Oh,
Warm
okay.
Springs, we're Berkeley Springs.
Okay, that's
And the
fine.
lady that was there
Yes.
said that's the way they do it.
Okay, okay. If you're the secretary for this particular release time and you don't wanna do it that way, you find something that works better for
Okay,
you,
I will.
you may do that.
Mhm.
If that works for them, that is fine.
It doesn't look good.
Okay. Yes, Carol.
When you
More
were talking about
confusing.
slashes in the
It is more
bonus,
confusing.
I would think.
I have my listeners slash the bonus boxes if the students have said Old Testament, New Testament, and 10 Commandments.
Okay,
Slash that box in half and write it in there with OT, MT, or T. So that I don't miss
right.
it, because sometimes I don't look down there and I can't figure out where they're getting the totals.
Yes.
The extra points,
Yeah, and you can see
I
that
had adjusted
some of
to
them
that.
are bigger. I see that Psalm 119, 105 is not a very big box out there for bonus. So, yeah, whatever works so that you know where you are. Yes, Michelle?
Years back, it was always that they couldn't say the verse until it was taught. That's not true anymore, right?
That is not true
Because they
anymore.
wouldn't be able to say it 3 times.
No.
That's what I thought, just
Okay.
double check.
Yeah, they can say them. They will have this entire sheet at the beginning of the year. They can't go ahead a unit, they can't go back a unit. But they could say all 3 verses 3 weeks in a row.
And some of my faith that have been years, many more years than I have, are having a hard time this past year, letting them do that. And I would tell them, they
Yeah.
says, well, you don't understand, honey, I've been here longer than you. And I
Change.
said,
Change is difficult for some of us to grasp. It really is. It is your responsibility to train your listener to
Well,
mark
they
the
do.
card the way you want it.
But then the students were penalized because they wouldn't let them go on.
Right.
And they couldn't get the points
Yes.
like the other groups were.
Okay.
And I tried to point that out. That's hard. If anybody has any hints on how that could be, I can do that better.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to, if that's happening, just to keep training and
I
keep
keep-
training. And sometimes one-on-one is the best. If you just have 1 or 2 who are doing it, say, I just have a suggestion for you, can we meet, 5 minutes before release time or whatever? And do that with them. Okay. Any other questions?
Sue?
Yes.
The, verses here that the students say, they don't have to be taught first?
I thought they had to be taught.
No,
No.
no, that has
The old way.
changed. That changed last year, year before, no. They do not have to wait for the verses to be taught. We are not going by week anymore.
Does the teachers know that?
Well, I would hope so.
Don't you know that?
Need to train our teachers too.
It probably wouldn't be a bad idea to talk to your teacher, but if they're not listeners, it really doesn't matter to them. You know what I mean? They're teaching the lesson they're supposed to teach. It's up to the listener to know what they're supposed to do with the card.
Oh, okay,
And it's up to you to let the listener know what they're supposed to do with the card.
okay.
Okay?
Boy,
Any other questions?
I don't understand what they're saying. I guess
somebody else
because I
didn't
don't
understand it.
No, I just came in last year, so I was already acclimated to,
Okay,
they can say the first 3 verses at one time,
yes.
like in unit. Okay, that's the way, yeah.
All 3 weeks.
Okay.
It used
So
to
one
be-
time it was
yes,
different.
It was.
Okay, all right, well
Yes.
then I'm doing it right.
Yes.
Yes,
If you
yes.
just came in, you don't need to worry about how it used to be
Okay.
done.
I was gonna say,
Some of these who have
to
been
me, that
for a
would
while,
be very difficult.
It is a change. Okay,
I see now what they're saying.
any other questions?
Wow.
Okay, a student, I'm gonna read this to you and I'm sorry, but a student list will be mailed to the school coordinator the week of August 10th, which is next week. We have to wait till camp is over to update the grades. That will not happen until this week. So, a student list, and I have a number of these things written down for you on a handout here that I will give you. A student list will be mailed to the school coordinator the week of August 10th that will contain all of last year's long-term students, invite a friend students, dropped students, and non-long-term students. Some of your students did not fill out the long-term form. Some of them, the parents wrote, no, I want this every year.
She said.
We have noted that in the computer, so when you see that student's record out here along this edge, it's going to tell you, is this student long-term? Were they just invite a friend? Did they drop? Because a dropped student, an invite a friend student, and a non-long-term student will have to have a new permission form.
You mean some students don't need a permission form?
If they filled out the long-term form last year, they don't have to fill out another one. That's why I want to get that list to you as soon as possible so that you know who needs another permission form. How many of you kept the copies of your permission forms?
I think Heather did.
All right, good job. Let me emphasize this year, keep copies of your permission forms. We will make copies if we have to, but we really do not want to do that. Okay?
On that, have you changed things with the school, or have you checked with the schools? Are they gonna honor the long-term?
We are not talking to the school. That is up to each release time. Please
Okay.
do not tell them.
We will
We
not.
can give you copies if you want.
No, I
But if
meant
they ask for it, we must honor whatever the school
the
decides.
long-term. Yes, the kids who signed up for long-term, does the school have a record that that child's a long-term and does not have to get a permission so that they can still come? Because we had trouble last year.
I
with
would
them
doubt
release-
it. That's
They wouldn't
not up to
release
the
those
school.
students.
It's not up to the school to have that record, it's up to you to have that record.
But if we didn't have the paper there, this is what, we have to take last year's in, show them it's long-term.
School.
And some of them are still not gonna honor it, but please don't ask them.
Okay.
Some
Can
of
we
the
give them a
schools-
copy of the list that you sent us that shows long-term or not?
You may do that, yes.
Okay.
Please do not ask them. If they say, we have to have a copy from every student again this year, we must honor that. Each school is allowed to do that, but don't ask them if they want a copy from every student, okay? Do you understand what I just said? Okay. Do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say, our school district automatic copies them before they send
Okay.
them, so.
Yeah, and I don't know if they keep them, but if you kept copies, you should be able to tell, and the list will tell them what we
I
have.
believe, and I'm not 100% on this, but I
Okay.
believe if you, like, I signed my daughter up for every year of soccer.
Okay,
So I believe they keep their copies and send it with their file to the next school, because she's changing schools this year,
okay.
so.
We do try to, with our student list, we take, just for example, the fifth graders at Greencastle Elementary, that were fifth graders last year, they will be on the CIA list for Greencastle this year. And it will be noted, were they long-term? Because they are signed up for CIA
Right.
already.
That's my daughter too,
Okay.
because she went from fifth to, she's
Yeah.
going to sixth.
I don't know if the school kept any records, it's not really their responsibility.
Okay.
If you have a very good school, I mean, some of them may do that. Yeah, a lot of that depends on the school administration.
So you're saying the school coordinator will get that list,
Yes,
and they'll pass that on to us then?
Ask them for it.
Okay, well, I was just curious.
I'm going to try to have the labels printed at the same time that the student list is printed. I've already talked with one secretary who would like me to email her student list to her when I send it to the coordinator. If you want me to email you your student list,
Oh, that would be nice.
send me an email,
Okay.
sue@joyelle.org. Pretty simple. There is an E on Sue. SUE@joyelle.org. And if anything comes to you after today, after we've talked in this training, email me then as well. I will not be in the office the rest of the week. We're going trainings in Lancaster and York, but you can call me as well if you need something right away. Okay? So, we've talked about the student list. All, and I think I did say this, all students other than long-term will need to fill out a new permission form to attend release time. We are getting that list out so that calls can be made into the home from this list. Before calling into the home, you need to have a system of how you're going to record changes. They're not gonna have the same teacher they had last year. So you're gonna want, some of them may not even have, some of them may have allergies now that they didn't have last year. And some contact information, emergency numbers perhaps changed. So I'm gonna suggest that you staple a blank piece of paper to your permission form, the copy of the permission form that you have, and write the changes on there as you call into the home. Now, the school coordinator is getting some information today as well about calling into the home. It is not your responsibility to call every student. It is not the school coordinator's responsibility to call every student. Some school coordinators want to do that, that's fine. It would be really good if you could get the listeners of the students to call them, especially if they're going to be listening to that student again this year. Just to build that relationship with that parent, and to update that information. And we will need that information here. If they have allergies that they didn't have before, that's not quite as important here as it is in your release time. If they have an address change, if they have, an emergency contact change, those are the kind of things that we need to know about here. I don't need to know about health issues. We don't even use the teacher's name here, but I know many of the release times need those as well. Any questions on that? So discuss that with your school coordinator. My goal is to have all of that stuff out by the end of next week. I'm going to try very hard to make that happen, so that you have time to work on your things and you have time to talk to the coordinator and that kind of thing. Any questions about anything we talked about so far? If something just came to you from one of the cards, please feel free to ask. Okay, clearance information. We have copies of clearance information. I do not have one for a handout for each of you, but I want to show you what is in the packet. We are making these available to the school coordinators for any that they wanted to take. If you are a former volunteer from last year, you should have received a packet of stuff from us in the spring or at some point there. Just a couple things I want to point out to you. Clearances for volunteers. The child abuse history clearance is now free. Sorry. The criminal history from the Pennsylvania State Police is now free. If you have to have your fingerprints done, there is a cost of $25.75 for that, and you must fill out the online form first. Let's see what else I have here. If you've been a continuous resident of Pennsylvania for the past 10 years, you do not need fingerprints. You can just sign the affidavit. And there are affidavits in the packets. This is the cover letter. I already have a packet with me. Okay. There's a cover letter. There's instructions on how to do it online. There are copies of the forms that you need to fill out. There's a copy of an affidavit, and there is a volunteer permission form. Volunteer application, sorry. Every volunteer needs to fill out a new application this year. You will not be receiving pre-printed applications. Because of the clearance information, we had to add some stuff to the form. So every volunteer has to have a volunteer application filled out. We are not considering your information complete until we have that. We have received 400?
Close to it.
Things back from volunteers. Some of you will get a packet with volunteer applications that are not complete. If you could get your volunteers to complete that, you need a signature on the front, 2 signatures on the back, and all the questions need to be answered. Any questions about that?
If you help with more than one release time, do you need more than one paper for each one?
Volunteer application? there is a place on there that asks how many, do you help with other release times?
Yeah.
If you write that on there, that'll be fine. If you fill it out at 1 and write that on there. And sometimes I get them back. We have volunteers that help at 4 release times, and they'll write, filled it out at Ben Chambers, or filled it out at Buchanan, or
Okay.
whatever. And
I got one every year from James Byrd.
Yeah, you
and one
probably
from
get
Nancy
those, yes.
Grayson, and one from CIA, and yeah.
Yeah, there will not be any pre-printed volunteer applications this year. And we got a lot of information back without volunteer applications. So, you will be receiving, probably at workshop, a list that looks like this. You will be receiving one exactly like this today. But, I'm just gonna pick out Mary Whitmore. Her name will be here, Whitmore, Mary. There will be a date in here if we have this. There will be a date in here if we have this. And a date in here if we have this or this. So they do not need affidavit and fingerprints. The affidavit is for anyone who's lived in Pennsylvania 10 consecutive years. If that is not the case, they must have their fingerprints done. Yes?
And now we're in Maryland, and we were told we didn't have to
Do
comply
the
with these
Pennsylvania.
laws because we're in Maryland. We were told we did not have to.
Are you helping at a release time in Pennsylvania?
No, I'm in Hancock, Maryland.
Okay. We have a number of people who help in Hancock and Southern Fulton.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
No, but we were told we don't help in Pennsylvania, if we're just in Maryland or in West Virginia. That we're not required to do that.
That's what we were told
That's
too.
what we were told.
Okay. That is not the information I heard.
No, that's what we heard. We said from Kathy Dunkelberger, you absolutely
Okay.
do not have to do it.
Because we are in Pennsylvania and we are the,
Which she said, because you're not, because we're in Maryland.
okay,
We live in Maryland. Said we don't have to comply with that.
okay. I will follow up. Whatever Kathy told you, consider that what it is. We will let you know if it's different, okay? Okay. Make sure I'm getting everything here. If you have we do have to have clearance information from new volunteers before they start serving. Existing volunteers have until July 1st, 2016 to fill out their information. New volunteers must have their clearance information to serve.
Who determines that? Do we get the okay from you, or do we ourselves determine that everything is there?
I will give you a copy of this with what we have in when I print this.
So when you guys get, like, for example, if they'll give the information, they'll give all that to you.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will give you a form with everybody's name that I have and what they have in. So when you look at this, if Mary doesn't have her Pennsylvania State Police form in yet, we need to have that. Because she's been a volunteer before, we have to have that by July 1st, 2016. A previous volunteer does not have to have it all done to serve this year.
I'm just thinking of new volunteers, you know, they're filling the information out,
Right.
they give it to us, they send it to Camp Joel,
They probably will give it to you once release time starts.
but until you get it and we get the okay from you, they're not allowed to serve?
You will have this.
Oh, okay.
So
we're the
we'll mark
ones-
it on here.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is, I guess if they have it, we assume that it's legitimate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, is it
We have to
signed
make the
replace it, should be
determination, is
signed?
everything here, is everything correct for them to start?
Yes. If you can mark
Okay.
everything on here,
Okay,
they can start.
they can start, all right.
Yes.
I just, yeah.
And I will tell you that a receipt, like if they have to have their fingerprints done, and they fill it out online, they print out a receipt. If they have that receipt and don't actually have the form for fingerprints yet, that receipt will serve as proof until they get that. because this system is getting more backlogged every day, just because.
Right, right.
So, some people are waiting 3 and 4 weeks to get their papers back from being fingerprinted. So if they have that receipt,
That'll serve.
that will serve. And if you wanna write that in here instead of the date, because when they get their fingerprint paper back, they're gonna go get their fingerprints done. And then you have to wait for the verification to come in the mail. That is a very long process, the fingerprints. And so if you just wanna write in here receipt, and then mark it off when you actually get the copy or the date that they have the fingerprints done.
Pencil.
Yes.
Yeah, in pencil.
Are there recommendations for where people go for, is that in the packet to, information about where they should go to be fingerprinted?
Oh, it'll tell you when you get your registration.
Yeah, there's one in McConnellsburg, I think. There's one up here in Chambersburg at the Lincoln Intermediate Unit.
Oh, okay.
They run it out of there. And there's a big sign there that says fingerprinting, so.
And there's one up there, you know where Overly Raker is? It used to be.
No.
Okay.
When
Yeah,
you
where the
register
police
for your
station is.
fingerprints, because I had to do it for my job, when you register for your fingerprints, you can ask the computer where the, things are, and it
Where
will
the
give you
centers are.
directions to where the centers are from
nearest
your
one is,
location,
okay.
so it'll tell you
Oh,
everything.
that's good to know.
Yeah, you can get online and get the location. The only one that I'm aware of in this immediate area is the one in Chambersburg. That's pretty much where everybody's been going. So I am gonna go ahead and pass this around to you. This is one of your responsibilities as a secretary, is to make sure that the clearance things are done and turned in, okay? Now, the list you receive at workshop will have some already on. If we've received anything from your release time.
September 1st.
You will give your registration numbers, not attendance numbers, registration numbers to your equipping coordinator the first Thursday of each month, beginning October 1st. Some of you will only have been in session a week, maybe none of you will, some of you will not be in session at all, a week or two. Numbers to your equipping coordinator first Thursday of the month beginning October 1st. However, we would like to know as soon as possible how many registrations you had first day. So if you could just let your coordinator know that as soon as possible. And like I said, if you don't start till the 29th or whatever, you can give both of those numbers. We want to know how many students you had registered first day, not how many students came. How many students you had registered first day. Let your equipping coordinator know that as soon as possible. October 1st, total number of students registered, total number of volunteers registered with you. And then it will be the first Thursday of each month after that.
I have a question.
Yes,
That would include all the ones that have, what do you call them?
the long-term form?
Right. What if a long-term parent changes their mind? Do the students have to fill out a withdrawal form?
Yes. In a perfect world, they will all do that.
Because we'd have to go through the school secretary to get it to the student,
Right.
to get it to the, or I guess we could mail it to the parent.
Or call them. Don't just automatically assume that they withdrew.
Yeah.
Parents might forget. And you are going to get some forms from students who signed up last year. They're just not going to remember that they did it. This is the reason for the phone call into the home prior to going to school, so that you can talk with the parent and tell them, your student signed up last year, you signed up for the rest of their school career. We are expecting Billy to show up at our release time. This is the day it is, this is the time it is. Are there any changes to Billy's information? This is what we have. Could you tell me his teacher? Could you tell me if there's changes to his information? That builds a relationship with the parents, and as well, parents are going to forget that they signed them up. So if you have a long-term student who brings another form this year, do not count them twice. Okay?
do you want the new form?
Yes. Make a copy, send us the new form. At the end of the year, keep your copies. Do not send your copies back here. Do not send your listener records here. All we need here at the end of the year are the secretary records. Okay?
But keep your listener records.
Yes, that would be a good idea as well, to keep your listener records as well as your permission forms. Any other questions? Are there any questions that you have concerning your position at all? Anything we talked about today, anything that we didn't talk about today? Any questions that you have, I would be glad to answer or entertain. Yes?
Just a question about the withdrawal form. And do the parents have to sign the official withdrawal form, or we can just say, we need a note from you?
Yes. We can get a note from them saying that the child will no longer be coming. And like I said, you can call into the home, you can email to the home. Some of them are not going to respond, and some of them are not going to remember that they signed up for long-term anyway. I don't think there's any CIAs in here, but that happens a lot when the child transitions from elementary to CIA. A lot of them just do not return. Yes, Michelle?
Because we as secretaries are kind of be the gateway for the clearance information.
You are the person who takes care of
Right.
that information. Yes.
Joelle, I assume, carries liability insurance. Does that cover us if something were to happen?
Yes, you are under Joyelle's umbrella. In the school coordinator manual, there is a liability of insurance summary that we put in there every year. Yes, if something happened, it would go through Joyelle.
Joelle.
This is why it is critical that you get those clearances. Yeah, we have to, that is as much for protection of you as it is the child, as it is Joyelle. It's just, I mean, this is not something we ask for. The state is telling us we have to do it. And there again, if you are in a school or a church that has to see those copies, we have to comply with that. There again, please do not ask them if they want copies of all the volunteers, but if they come to you and say, we must have copies of each of your volunteers, we have to honor that. And we have those copies here. I have them, we're keeping them all electronically as well. So I could email them to you, you could print them out, or we can print them here and send them to you so that you can give them to the church. I would suggest if that is the case with the church you're in, anything new that comes in, make copies immediately for the church, if you know that they want to have them.
What is CIA? I am 110% new to this, and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed.
I'm sure you are. I'm sorry, I do not want to overwhelm you, but it's a lot. CIA is our Christian in Action program that we do in junior high.
Okay.
And we are in every junior high school within Franklin County. We have a couple in Lancaster County and a couple in York County as well. Well, not Lancaster right now, but we are in York County as well. So the students who, except for Waynesboro School District, the students who leave 5th grade have a CIA program that they can go into in 6th grade. That's for 6th through 9th usually. Most of them are 6th through 8th graders, but it is available to 9th graders as well. Great question. Anything else? Is there any questions that you have? I mean, really, if you're new, there may be others. This is being videoed so that we can put it online.
Great.
So, so if there are questions, if you're new, there might be someone new who's seeing this, who has the same questions that can't ask me.
Is this for public school only? Because I know for me personally, my daughter does not qualify for this because she's way too young, but I homeschool. So are there homeschool students that also come to this?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Our schedule is online of what school meets where and what time and all that. But yes, we have a number of homeschool students who attend our programs. Yes?
What week are you planning on opening of the school year?
August 19th, I believe, right?
We are asking everyone to open the week of the 15th to the 18th, if all possible. Most of our opening dates
In September.
reflect that week. Yes, September 14th, the week of September 14th. We have schools starting much earlier this year. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're all aware of that, yes,
I actually started my daughter's homeschool yesterday.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
What summer?
She does homeschool. She said she started yesterday.
I'm sure some of the kids are gonna be asking that. Any other questions? We do have a few, we have about 20 minutes yet, so if there is anything you want me to talk about, I would be glad to talk about it.
I think maybe you said already, but we will be getting a list of the listeners and what information they have in already, right?
You will,
Yeah.
but this should be your record for anybody who does not appear on that list. And if you want to put the ones that I give you onto this list so that you have a complete list. I can, like I said, this is not on the website yet. I'm gonna see that it gets on the website. But, and I can send you your list electronically if you want it. But there will be a list for workshop of who we have and what we have. And like I said, if there's something incomplete, especially if we don't have an application, you'll be able to tell that by the report that we give you.
And that's for bus drivers and people who ride the bus and everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if they're involved in our program,
They're volunteers.
they are volunteers.
Now, bus drivers, are they qualified to have a CDL? Do we have to be responsible for receiving that as well as like, you know,
What release time are you helping with?
Buchanan?
Okay, yes. Yes, we have to have a CDL for bus drivers. We have to have copies of their CDL, front and back. We have to have a copy of their driver's license. Some of them have a CDL and a driver's license, believe it or not, different. We have to have a copy of their medical certification that the doctor says they can drive. Please be aware of that. I don't know if the school coordinator handles that stuff or the secretary is responsible for that, but if you get a copy of your bus driver's information, take a look at the expiration date. If it expires during this school year, we're gonna have to have the updated stuff as soon as they have it. Most of our bus drivers have been very, very good about seeing that their stuff is handed in at the beginning of the year, and some of them just mail their copies here whenever things are updated. Yes?
Our children are transported by the Morgan County Schools, their bus driver. Would they already have that information? Required to have that to be a school bus driver? Or
Copies of their CDL?
CDL, driver's license, anything, medical certification?
We would like to have copies of it. They should the school district probably has to have a copy of it. But yes, we want to have copies, even if they don't drive our buses. It's helpful for us to know that they are compliant
Okay.
with what we need.
I haven't heard this mentioned yet, so I'm just curious. Does anybody need to have like their basic CPR and first aid certification, or is that not?
That is not a requirement.
Okay.
It'd be great if somebody had it, but yeah, that is not a requirement.
Okay.
Really limit volunteers, wouldn't it?
You know, I don't want to say that too loud, the state will start requiring.
That's right.
Well, I was in the
State
I
has ears.
had mine.
That's fine.
So I
Yes.
didn't know like if somebody got, I don't know, like a bloody nose or something, where they would go.
It would be important for your coordinator and the rest of the volunteers to know that you are certified in those.
Okay.
Yep. Anything else? Now's your chance. I know this is a lot of information. I know there's a lot of new stuff going on. These clearances are going to be some extra work. but like I said, we did not ask for this. The state is mandating it, so we have to follow through with that. If you have any questions, if you think of something over lunch or whatever, please let me know. We will be meeting back here again if you want to come. Most of that will probably just be covering questions, and if you're new and you want to know specifics about the card, we can go over that. 12:30 to 1:30 this afternoon. The child care people will still be here. If any of you are, have children up there. If you find you don't have a secretary manual in your bag or tub or whatever you have, please let me know. I want to see that you get that. It would be, yeah, this is one thing that I do have on here that I missed. It would be very beneficial for you to choose someone else in your release time to come alongside you and learn to be a secretary. You can train them. It could be someone who, a listener who does exceptional with the card. That would be a great person. Ask someone if they think they have the gifting for the details and the things that go on. Show them the position description. It's in the secretary manual. Let them read it. See if there's anyone interested. It would be helpful in a lot of ways. I mean, some of you I know have to serve as listeners as well as secretaries. And sometimes you get pulled away from your listening group because of the secretary responsibilities. If you could have someone else who is able to do that, or if you can do it without being a listener, that's helpful. But I know sometimes that happens, and sometimes it's unavoidable. But I would just encourage you to bring someone alongside you and to train them, because the reality is you may not be there every week. You may not be able to do that every week, and it would be helpful if someone else knew that. Anything else? I know I've said that a lot. Yes.
The volunteer application, there may be some in here now who have volunteers that have not completed their application. Will you just make copies of what's in the secretary's manual, or are you planning on giving out blank
There will
applications?
be 10 blank applications in each basket.
Okay.
They're in the folder that has a bunch of other information. I think we put your staff list and your 10 volunteer applications on this side. There's not a whole lot of other stuff on this side. Your staff list from last year would be in there with your volunteer applications. There are no pre-printed applications, so don't look for those. They would be just the blank ones. And if you need more, yes, you can make copies of the stuff in your manual.
More copies of those.
Yes.
When do we get a cover basket?
It should have been given to your school coordinator today, if you have one. If you don't have a school coordinator, you might want to pick it up yourself.
Where are they at?
They were out in the maintenance building. You mean the school coordinators or the information?
The information, the tub, the
The tub
basket.
was, they were out in the maintenance buildings.
Oh, okay.
And when the coordinators came in, they were told to pick their stuff up. That's why we had the bags.
We came in
over there.
late, so that's why.
Okay, yeah, that's where it would be. Exactly. Out in the
Over
big,
in the maintenance.
yeah, the
building
big
over.
building with the great big doors. It should, if nobody's gotten it, it should still be in there. And anything else, Bibles, I think, are out there as well.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yes, the volunteer application, please make sure that they are completed when you send them in. There is a signature required on the front, at the bottom. There are 2 signatures required on the back. And then all of the questions concerning convictions and that kind of thing. Please make sure they're completed when you send them in to us. If there is a question answered yes that alarms you, please highlight it, put a note on it or something, because we will take care of that here. You do not have to talk to someone in your release time if that's the case. And if someone gives you a background check or a criminal check or whatever that has an alert on it, we will take care of that from here as well. So if you notice those things, please see that they get pointed out to us, because we want to follow up and make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Okay?
suggestions for calling into the home when they say, I can't understand you, no speak English. We're gonna
Okay.
hit that.
I don't know what to tell you unless you can find someone who speaks English. Children usually speak it better than their
Yeah,
parents.
if you can get a child.
If you can,
we're
yeah, if you can
okay.
talk to the child and they can be talking with
Interpret.
their parent at the same time, you know, you might be able to get those answers.
Sometimes a child just gives you the answers, is that
Yeah.
okay?
Well, yeah, if the parent has already signed the form, if it's a long-term form, the parent has already given permission for them to come. You're just getting the changes.
Okay. So the child tells us the changes, that's
Mhm.
fine.
Yes. Okay, like I said, we will meet here again at 12:30. If any of you want to come back, we can talk about more things if you want. We can go through the manual a little more specifically if you want. If there's any question you have on any of the forms, I would be glad to help you with that if I can.
Is
Yes.
there another meeting on September the first?
Yes.
Is that you?
I think the one here is the second, actually.
Oh, it's the first.
It's the
It's the
first.
first.
Joelle is the first. Yes, that's our workshops. Oh, sorry. All volunteers should have gotten an invitation. We sent those out.
Yeah, 8:45 to
Yes.
12:30.
Yeah, I got mine yesterday.
Yeah, mine can answer.
Did it come yesterday?
Yeah.
Good.
I haven't gotten that one.
September 1st. Well, Maryland takes a little longer to
Okay.
deliver their mail for us. Sometimes it's taken as many as 8 days. And this was a bulk mailing, so it has to go all over the place. So, yeah, September 1st. There will not be secretary training, September 1st. If you have someone who wants to talk with me that day, I would be glad to talk to them, but we are not going to have a scheduled secretary training. I am excited to see all of you here today. I appreciate you taking out the time to come. I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate what you do. You make my job easier, and I do appreciate that. And I want to help you be successful. So, some of the best things that you can do is, like I said, find someone to come alongside you, train your listeners, train your listeners, train your listeners, so that they understand. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to do something that you don't understand and nobody will tell you. Sometimes they don't ask, so you might just have to notice that you have to tell them. So thank you so much for coming. Lunch is not for another 15 minutes, but I am going to pray with you. This is your last chance. Any more questions?
I just have a comment.
Okay.
For those of you who have not received any information from your past year's volunteers, how are you gonna know whether or not they're gonna come back and whether or not you need your clearances and so on? Now, I know I have emailed some of I have an advantage of knowing since I'm working down here, to whether or not we've received anything here from some of the volunteers from last year, as far as clearances are concerned. So I emailed those people, telling them that I needed them, but I've not had any response at all from them. So I'm gonna have to follow up and ask them, are you coming back? And, you know, we need these things
Yeah.
for you to come back. But I didn't know whether you've had any contact with your listeners up to this point or not, or whether you know they're coming back or not, because of having to provide the clearances. Of course, now we have another year, it's
Yes.
not as important, but
Yes.
they don't know that.
And some people are waiting till next year simply because you have to do it every 5 years. So this gives you an extra year. You know, if you do it in January or February, then you don't have to have it again until 2021. So,
I'm just afraid there's a bunch of listeners who won't come back because of the paperwork. and what they have to do.
that is definitely a possibility. I have already talked to some of those people. But if they do anything in their church at all with their children,
Mhm.
they're going to need it for that too. So, I have had that conversation with a couple of them, you know, are you helping at church? Well, they haven't said anything at church. Well, it's gonna have to happen at some point. But yes, yeah, you need to know that. You might not know that until your first day. Most of you get together before the first day of release time, so that might be when you know the answer to that. And like I said, all new volunteers must have their clearance information in before they serve this year. Yes,
When will you find out whether we have to have it or not?
I'm gonna talk to Gary today. Yeah, just assume that you don't unless you hear from me, and it will come through Kathy,
Okay.
okay?
And so our new volunteers would not need it?
Only if they're serving in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
from what you
Okay.
just told me that you understand, yes. But if, like I said, if that changes, we will let Kathy know, and she will have to let the rest of you know. Okay? Again, I appreciate you very much. I appreciate you for coming. I appreciate that you've come today for the training. Thank you for what you do. It's a lot of work, but it's a mission field out there. The public school is definitely a mission field, and you are working right in there. All you have to do is look at the news and see how needy our children are. So we appreciate that you are willing to do that. Yes, for the next generation. So let me pray with you. I will pray for our lunch as well during that time. And then we are dismissed.